Hola, ¿qué tal? Buenas tardes, buenas noches, dependiendo a qué hora nos miren. Tenemos hoy en el estudio una invitada que viene desde lejos, pero con raíces también aquí del este de Texas, y vamos a platicar un poquito con ella. Una parte importante en sus logros como deportista, una latina que tiene la oportunidad de convertirse en una de las primeras en lograr esto, así que le vamos a dar la bienvenida a Isabella Slape, quien, bueno, nos acompaña. Isabella, buenos días.
Buenos
How are
días.
you?
Doing well. Thank you for inviting me.
Desde El Paso, Texas vienes, right?
Sí, El Paso, Texas.
So, vamos a hacer esta entrevista un poco bilingüe, un poco Spanglish, decimos nosotros,
Yes.
¿no? Porque obviamente Isabela, pues bueno, creció aquí en Estados Unidos y como muchos latinos, el Spanish está limitado, ¿no? Isabela, what you got? 50%, 60% Spanish?
60% Spanish. There you go.
Es
Yes.
parte de la vida de latinos, you know, like growing up here in the US, you kind of have English as your primary
For
language,
sure.
but you're going to learn Spanish, right?
Yes.
After you go to Cuba and all this.
Oh, yes, I better.
You better.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So, primero que nada, let's talk a little bit about why you're here. This is a
Okay.
big accomplishment
Thank
for
you.
you. Ella tiene un logro impresionante. Could you say that you're the first Latina to accomplish this, or are we going too far there?
I wouldn't say first Latina because I do know that the coach, the founder of this team, his daughter played on it, and she is the one that started the foundation that I'm working for that empowers Latina athletes. So I'm not the first Latina athlete, but I am the first Texan.
The first Texan.
Yes, and first person from El Paso to be doing this as well.
So, la primera tejana, dice que a lo mejor no la primera latina, ya es darle mucho crédito, dice, pero sí la primera tejana, y qué bueno
Yes.
que es una latina también de
Yes.
Texas
For sure.
en lograr esto. Now, tell us what this is. We're making a big deal, but we haven't even told people what it is. ¿De qué se trata? ¿Qué está representando?
So it's a team of only about 12 athletes, 4 collegiate players, and we're going to be traveling to Cuba, Havana, Cuba, at the end of the summer and playing in a big tournament against the Cuban national teams and Cuban junior national teams.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll be representing the United States in that way. And when we get there, we get to experience how the Cuban softball players play on their fields and what they experience every day.
So this is a big accomplishment for you as an athlete.
Yes, it is one of the bigger things I feel like I've done. I've played on forms of USA softball teams before, a USA high performance team, but it was nothing that actually was out of the States. And this is something that's a first for me, and I'm very excited for it.
Now, you've been playing, I'm assuming, since you were young.
Since I was 4 years old.
4 years
The
old.
only thing that I've ever truly
Did you
loved.
like it at 4 years old? Or was it mommy and daddy like making you go play ball and then you kind of learned to love it?
Okay.
It's okay. It's okay, Mom. You're going to watch this later. So.
No. It had nothing to do with them. And I feel like my mom wasn't a huge fan of me playing softball because it is a very dangerous sport. And at the time when you're growing up, you play co-ed, so you play with boys. So I don't think my mom was a big fan of it, but I started playing because of my brother. My brother started playing baseball at the time, and I remember running around his baseball practices, just getting in the way and putting on his cleats and stealing his glove and stuff like that, just to try to keep up with my older brother. And then I think my parents realized later on that, like, you know what, she's getting in the way, like she needs to be put somewhere else. So they put me on a little t-ball team, and it just took off from there. It was, at the time, I didn't know it was going to be so important, and I doubt my parents knew either. But there's nothing that I've done that I've truly enjoyed more.
So you've spent the rest of your time on the field after that?
Yeah, I mean, that's all we ever do. My family lives on softball and baseball fields. We live at training facilities, in the car, traveling for baseball and softball. Our vacations are around baseball and softball. We travel and we're like, what can we do vacation wise? We're already in this random state. Let's do something that's for the family. But that's all we do. So yeah, I'd spend most of my time there for sure.
Isabela va a representar a Estados Unidos en un torneo y te vas a ir a La Habana, Cuba. Es donde vas a estar ahí. Ella se ha pasado la mayor parte de su vida, como dice ella, desde los 4 años en los campos, atravesándose ahí, jugando con su hermano. Y pues bueno, es realmente un orgullo que puedas. Now, you're awfully young. So this
Yes.
opens the door for many other opportunities. Are you going to pursue
Sure.
a softball as a career? I mean, some
That
people, I
would
mean, for some, this is a career, you know?
Yes, no, that would be the dream. But right now I'm 19. I mean, I'm in college right now studying social work. I want to advocate for younger children and fix that system as best as I can. Just change something in my life. Um, I feel like it's something that I would love to do. It's a dream of mine. Every athlete dreams to go pro, but I know that with opportunities like this, I only have 3 years left to play. Once my collegiate career is done, so I want to make the most out of everything, and this is one of those things that it's just me making the most out of my career for
Right.
sure.
So how can people
Yeah.
get involved? How can people from all over Texas, hopefully
Yes.
everybody gets involved and
For
supports you?
sure.
Again, let me remind you, this is the first Texan that
Yeah.
gets this opportunity. So it's a big deal. So
Yes, it
for everybody out
is.
there watching on social media, I know videos get shared and stuff.
For sure.
How can people like help out? Or what can
Yeah.
they do besides pray for you to everything goes well, you know? But
Yes.
there's more to prayers, right?
There definitely is. There's support. So with the support right now, I'm trying to raise money. It's expensive. I don't know if you know how much it is to go to Cuba.
I don't, but
Yeah. Well, I
would you
didn't.
mind telling me? I mean,
Yeah.
what it's costing?
I didn't know either until I finally got accepted on the team and I saw how much it was, and I ran to my parents and was like, you know what, we don't have the money for this. Like, I'm paying for my education and there's more to it. So I need about $10,000.
Wow.
Yeah. And that covers everything that comes with the trip. It covers all my stuff, it covers my plane tickets, it covers my hotels, it covers my meals for all the days that I'm there, it covers my uniforms, it covers medical insurance just in case I get hurt
Right.
playing out there. It covers fully everything. So we're trying to raise the money, and we have GoFundMe's going on. I'm working with the foundation called A, and it's empowerment leadership of Latinas. So companies or anybody that wants to donate through that foundation. I have like a donation letter, a sponsor letter that I can send out, and they can fill it out, send it back to the foundation, and they can get tax exceptions to all their donations. Every penny that gets donated to the foundation goes straight to me and the other athletes that are working with the foundation. I'm posting everything on my social media, trying to spread the word out. Just trying to get more support from Texas and my hometown and stuff like that for sure.
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
And we're going to post all that information along with the video so people can check it out and
Yeah.
support you. De nuevo, vamos a estar ahí traduciéndole un poquito a Isabela. Tiene un gran logro, ha jugado béisbol, ahora tiene la oportunidad de representar a Estados Unidos, ser la primera tejana, como lo habíamos dicho, se la ha pasado jugando, pero nos menciona el alto costo de jugar. Obviamente nosotros, as parents, I think we know that sports are expensive, period.
Yeah.
Si usted tiene hijos en los deportes, me imagino que sabe exactamente el costo. Isabela y su familia más o menos nos está diciendo $10,000 que viene cubriendo todos los gastos que necesita, sus aseguranzas, para protegerse mientras esté jugando en La Habana, Cuba, el viaje, las visas y todo lo que necesita. Y obviamente un gasto para la familia, así que ha creado GoFundMe's. Have you started cooking yet? You know, people cook to raise money. Do you cook?
I don't think anyone needs to be eating my cooking. I'll get my mom to do that. She's the cook. No one needs to be eating my food.
Le pregunto
I'll try.
si ha decidido cocinar. Muchas veces hacemos venta de comidas para recaudar fondos y no recomienda que alguien coma lo que ella prepara. What do you cook? What's the meal that you can prepare the best? Sandwiches?
Macaroni.
Macaroni and cheese? Yeah, the microwavable one.
Yeah, the ones you can buy in the box.
In the box and just heat it up, yeah.
Yeah.
So, si le interesa una caja de macaroni en el microondas, los platillos que Isabella puede preparar. So, what else can you tell us about, your journey, about, all this playing softball? And I mean, to me, it's a big thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's something that I grew up around. I mean, we sit at the dinner table and we talk baseball and softball, and we watch baseball and softball. We listen to radio channels that have baseball and softball.
So you eat, sleep,
everything.
Baseball and softball.
Yeah, there's nothing that, I mean, I did other sports in high school. I was in cheer and I did other things, but
So do you like anything that's girly? Would be a big question.
I do. I mean, I was a cheerleader for a long time all growing up. My mom pushed it super hard because
Usually moms do, right?
right. And I was in dance and I didn't like any of those sports enough to continue them. So when it came down to collegiate sports, I told my parents like I really wanted to play softball. Um, of course, like there's always like just like turmoil. There's always going to be difficulties. I mean, my softball career has not been very easy um, with injuries and just a lot of things that come with playing the sports. But everything, I feel like everything has built me into the player that I am. I take this like the game very seriously. I have a lot of passion for it. I mean, it's one thing in my life that I feel like is super consistent and something that I can always depend on. And I'm pretty sure that's for most athletes in this sport. You tend to fall in love with little things about the game that most people overlook, like the smell of grass or playing on real dirt because every field
Right.
now is turf. So little things like that.
So, is there a difference? Le pregunto, ella está platicando sobre su vida, sobre su historia, cómo llega a jugar, pero ahora hay una gran diferencia en la era moderna, y lo menciona ella. La mayoría de los estadios modernos son sintéticos y no son artificial el zacate. Y hay una gran diferencia entre jugar en lo que es un campo antiguo de tierra y de zacate real a algo artificial.
Yeah.
What's the big difference? And is there...
Yes, definitely.
Really?
Yes. So I can't speak for other positions, but I do know me as a middle infielder. I definitely prefer dirt. So
Dirt.
yes, with turf, the ball is okay. So with dirt and grass, the ball when it gets hit, sometimes the dirt kind of softens the hit, so you can field it more cleanly. You don't get true hops, so the ball can bounce however it wants, but you can kind of see like your playing level and like where you're playing on the field and understand how the ball's going to get to you. But with turf, the ball doesn't stop, so it slides and it glides through the turf. So if they hit a shot right back at you, it's gonna come this as fast as it did off the bat. So it's a quicker game. Batting wise, I don't know. You said you didn't know much about softball,
Right.
but I'm a slapper. So batting wise, turf is a big advantage to me because I can make my hit bounce, and turf is super bouncy. So if it bounces on the floor and goes up high, I have a faster or better chance of making it to first because now the defenders have to wait for the ball to fall, right? On dirt, I feel like for me as a batter, it's better because I can dig my cleats into the dirt and I could run better. The whole concept of what track athletes they use spikes to get into the track. It's the same type of concept. Just turf is slippery. It's really weird. Even when you slide, you have to slide a little bit earlier because if not, you'll keep going. Like there's nothing to stop you, no traction. So I prefer dirt. I love a natural softball field. And I feel like they're super rare now because everyone wants a turf field.
Yeah, everybody does. Everybody wants turf.
Better looking.
You know, you don't have to maintenance it. Who wants to mow the yard? Who wants to mow the grass? I mean,
yep. Trust me, there's many times where we have to drag our own field by hand and we're walking around in a circle trying to get the field to look pretty. But it's always better look than a turf field, in my opinion. Yep.
Para ella dice que un campo natural es mucho mejor. Obviamente nos explica todo sobre las diferencias, que para todos aquellos que son atletas las entienden. Yo, bien perdido, ¿eh? Sí. You know, it's funny because my dad was one of those that didn't really like us playing sports because of the injuries. You know, he was such an overprotective dad that even as us guys, we're like, no, you don't need to do that. You're going to end up broken. You're going to end up hurting. Then you're going to ruin your life. You're going to be crippled. You're going to be broken. You know, so that was one of his big things. You know, were your parents like that with you, especially as a girl? Or did they just kind of let you run loose?
My mom's so protective. Quick story, over spring break, it wasn't, I think it was Christmas break. I went home and I have a training facility back home that I train at constantly. I lift weights and I throw a softball around for 7 hours of my day. But that one day I ended up staying really late and I was fielding ground balls and working on my glove work and just like doing little technique stuff. I had just got a new glove for Christmas, which I haven't had a new glove in years because I don't like to change my equipment, but superstition. Is it
superstition or is it really the fact that you molded and you kind of...
Superstition.
Superstition?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't. Everyone is so superstitious to me. Like my hairstyle has to be a specific way. My visor has to look like perfectly, and everything just to a T. But that day I was like, you know what? I better break in my new glove. Like I really needed one, and my old glove was beat down. So we were fielding baseballs, which I never do because I play softball and the ball is just very different. So I was like, you know what? It's not won't be that much different. It's the same technique, whatever. Um, well, I went to catch like a line drive and I couldn't squeeze my glove properly. So the ball bounced off and it hit my eyebrow. And I remember at the time, like, I was like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, I get hit all the time. Like, it's whatever. And my coach started freaking out and she was like, you need to go to the restroom. And I was like, what's going on? And I took off my glasses. I wear glasses when I play. And I like looked down and I had blood dripping down my
Oh,
face.
wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh. And this is the first time I've ever been hit in my face before playing softball. And I wasn't gonna say anything. I was like, yeah, like it looks crazy, but it's fine. Like right now it'll heal, whatever. And I was like waiting for the blood to stop and I was just talking to my coach and I get a ring on my watch and I look down and my mom's calling and I was like, that's kind of crazy. Like I haven't talked
Somebody's
to her
already
all
called her.
yeah, I was like, I haven't talked to her all day. So I went and I grabbed my phone and she was like, hey, you're still at the facility? And I was like, yeah, I haven't left. And she was like, what's going on? And I was like, nothing. I just took a break from fielding ground balls. And she was like, you coming home soon? And I was like, yeah, I am. And then she was like, something's not okay. Like, are you sure you're okay? And I was like, yeah, mom, like I'm fine. And I was like, are you at your work? My mom works at a hospital. And I was like, are you at your work? And she was like, no, I'm gonna go eat dinner with your dad. And she was like, you want to come join us? And I was like, yeah, but if I get there and I was like, if something happened at the facility and she was like, well, what happened? I was like, well, I kind of got hit in my eyebrow and I was like, it's nothing bad. It's nothing crazy. And she got so mad at me. Like the whole time we went to go eat, she was yelling at me and was telling me how like I'm going to have a scar. And she was just going after me. My dad was just laughing and he was like, you didn't catch a ball. And I was like, I didn't catch the ball. I was like, that's
Yeah.
what happened. I didn't catch the ball and I'm getting lectured now because I got hurt. So my mom is not a fan of the injuries. And there's so many that come with the sport. I mean,
Yeah.
it happens so
Any sport, yeah.
often. It's a game that it's pure luck, truly, because you never know where the ball's going to get hit. And it's something that I think she's worked on because before she was so strict on like, I had to wear a face mask and I had to make sure like I wasn't in any position that I would get really hurt. Like, she didn't like when I played third base because the balls came off super hot. I've never been a pitcher because she doesn't like the fact that I'm right there in front of the batters. So, but now she's a little bit more lenient. I feel like she's kind of gotten okay with it.
A little
Yeah,
better. You know,
a little
mothers
better.
are always like that.
Oh yeah.
So, again, I'm not a big sports guy, so I have to kind of like ask you,
Yeah.
you know, especially with, you know, the pros.
Okay.
Can the sports be rigged? Now I'm putting you in a big, tough situation, huh?
Yeah.
Do you think? I mean, could you? You're saying, you know, you never know how the game's going to go.
You never know how the game's gonna
never
go.
know. And then there's, I guess, because, you know, sitting here watching the Astros, Rangers, and people get all
Yes, I
upset and
saw
stuff,
that
and they're doing
game.
so good, and then all of a sudden they're like,
Yes.
"Oh, this is rigged." They're you know, it's my, and then everybody gets, you know, built up around, you know, the
Yeah.
game. But I'm just like,
There
could
is.
you really, you know,
I mean,
set up a game or not?
I wouldn't say you can set up a game. I feel like there's a lot of things that athletes, pros get in trouble for a lot, like whether it be substance under their hat to make the ball stick to their fingers better.
Is there, so there's
There's
tricks
so
that,
many things, but they're
yeah.
illegal. So they down like a league, and you have to play AAA for a little while, and then go back to the majors. But I do know that like even in little league, when in softball, when you travel and you play like tournaments, each tournament your game is only 60 minutes. It's drop dead. The timer stops, the game's over. It doesn't matter if it's tied. It doesn't matter if you're have bases loaded and your biggest hitters up to bat. It doesn't matter. The time runs out. That's it. The game's over. Right. So at that level, some coaches sometimes they'll like call times and talk to their pitcher for 10 minutes because their pitcher's struggling and it slows
So
down the
you're
game.
right.
Yeah, so you run out of time and most coaches do that when they're winning. So they run out of time and the other team can't come back. But the game can switch so fast. Like you mentioned the Astros and Rangers game, it was 0-0 until about the 6th inning, right? One error caused of 4 or 5 runs to score and that's pretty much how it is when you play teams that are so close in ability, that the game is so tight. A simple mistake, something like a brain fart or something that you just can't foresee, it can change a whole dynamic of a game. It's crazy. For
So what
sure.
are your secrets to a successful game? You talked about, all your beliefs, your rituals.
Yes.
What's the process of you getting ready for a game? You said your hair has to be done a
My
certain
hair
way.
has to
What's
be done a
what's the
specific
the
way.
game day hairstyle or what?
It's always a slick back ponytail, and the ponytail either has a very intricate braid that I have spent my whole life detailing to a T, or it's a softball. Anyone who's watching knows softball. They're called bubble braids, and it's just with rubber bands. I have really long hair, and everyone I've ever played for says that that's something that makes me me. I mean, my hair is always to a T. Ribbons. I mean, I'm a girl still, right? I mean, it's not a girly sport, but I'm a girl. So, like,
Yeah.
my cleats have a ribbon, my glove has a ribbon, my hair always has a ribbon in it. Like, little things like that. My hair is always specific. Um, my visor, under my visor, I have little quotes, things that, like, if I have a terrible, terrible game and I'm at second and I'm like, God, like, you are sucking today, I'll, like, look up at my visor and it has, like, quotes that I prefer and I read, Bible verses that I can remember.
Right.
Um, remembering like
So do you change quotes?
no, they're written in
There.
Sharpie.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So
So it's
they
not like
stay
you're
there.
sticking a sticky note up
No,
there to
no,
to change and
uh-uh.
motivate you as each game goes by.
No, no. It's something that
What's one of
I
those quotes under there?
well, a big one that I have is Matthew 19:26, which says, "With man, nothing is possible, but with God, all things are possible." So I always feel like the game I play sets you up for failure. I mean, you're one batter going against 9 defensive players. It's a game that you can be batting at 100 and still one of the best batters in the world, which means that 1 out of 10 times you get on base, which is nothing, right?
Right.
But it sets you up to fail. So sometimes I have to remember that, like, I am human, and like, my ability is a gift from God. It's something that I feel like is very God sent. So I sometimes have to remember, like, yeah, I might not be playing good today, but I do know that, like, this is such a human sport, right?
And I'm sure it's going to be hard for an athlete. I have a son that plays baseball and plays football, plays basketball.
Yeah.
Um, but it's got to be hard for an athlete when you're there and you feel like your play costs the game. Have you
Oh,
ever been in that situation where
definitely.
you're like, man, if I would
Yep.
have, played a little better, or if I would have,
Yeah. I feel like it's so, and me and my brother talk about it all the time. Me and my brother play collegiate sports at the same university right now, and we live together. And there's so many times where we talk about how, like, our mental, like, just our mental ability takes over our play so much. Like, he's a pitcher, so I'll, like, talk to him, like, I'll be like, oh, like, you did so bad today, and I'm like, they hit 2 home runs off you and walked all these batters, and he was like, I couldn't get out of it, like, my brain was just so, like, foggy, and I was like, yeah, and I was like, I mean, you'll figure it out, right? But it's so crazy how sometimes, like, little things, like, you bobble a ball and you're like, it's only the first inning, but then that's the only error of the game, and you're like, wow, like, that run scored because the runner got on first because of me.
So how do you handle it? I mean, how do you get off the field and you're okay, and how are your teammates? I mean,
Short-term memory. They teach you that so much. They, like, kind of push it down your throat, like, short-term memory. You make an error, short-term memory. Like, what you did wrong, right?
you
Every
learn from it,
athlete,
right?
yeah, every athlete knows that they did wrong, and especially at this higher level, most like, college coaches won't tell you, like, you didn't put your glove down. I know I didn't put my glove down. The ball rolled right in between
Right,
my
yeah,
legs.
yeah.
Like, I know I didn't get my glove down, but they'll tell you, like, do better. Like, the next ball, like, get more confidence, right? Softball, if you make a mistake, the next ball is going to come right back at you. And then you start getting in your head and you're like, God, like, I'm not playing good today. I don't want the ball to get hit to me. The ball's going to get hit right back at you.
Mhm.
So every time I make a mistake, or I mean, I'm not perfect. The game is hard. Every time I bobble a ball, I always say, like, you know what? I want another one. Like, I want another ball to get hit to me. Like, I know what I can do. And a runner on first means that I can roll a double play. I can make another advance that can help the team. Team wise, I feel like when you make a mistake, it's so important for your team to be backing you up.
Right.
I mean, it's hard. I've always told every teammate I played for or played with that the game is hard. So if I make a mistake and I know like my team isn't getting mad at me and they're like, you got it. Like I know what you can do on the field. Like I know you got this, and just the support, it makes the game that much easier. Yeah. Makes it like a sanctuary.
I want to put you on the spot.
Go ahead.
Hardest coach you've had throughout your life. Who would it be? Hey, no offense, coach. I'm sure you learned a lot, right? Because
sure.
there's some of those coaches that are very lenient, everything's okay, nothing happens. And then there's those that are down your throat. I mean, making you cry probably at some point.
Sure,
You cried, I'm sure, right?
Yes. I mean, I so I was back home, and that coach, those 2 years I've known my whole life, coached my sister when she played, knew my family very well. But I would say that that coach really changed the way I saw the game, changed the way like it had a lot of pros and cons to it. I mean, a lot of things I learned, and I had to grow up very quickly. I was the only freshman on the varsity team.
Wow.
I was
That's a big accomplishment too.
Yeah, it was something that I was super proud of. So that whole year was a learning curve for me. I feel like I had to develop and play so much older, so much mature compared to like the other girls because I had so much to prove. My sophomore year, I really wanted to make a statement that like I was meant to be on the field, and the coach really pushed me in a I don't know how to. I would say like both negative and positives, like I said, but that coach I would say is the reason why I do a lot of the things that I do. When I was going through all that year of playing for that coach, there came a point where I was like, I can't do this no more. Like every athlete goes to a point where they're like, this is too much. Like I love the sport, but how much am I going to sacrifice like my mental health? How much am I going to sacrifice my body, my family's mental health, stuff like that. When that season ended, I was kind of in that boat, and I told my parents like, you know what, like I love playing. I don't see myself anywhere else, but I'm so tired. Like I'm drained. Like this coach pulled out so much from me that like playing softball is so traumatizing now. And my parents are like, that's crazy, right?
And there's a lot of kids who quit a lot of things in life because of situations like that. Now, would you look at it a little different now? Now, at that point, you were like, I hate your stinking guts. You know?
No. And at that point, I was so angry. I remember telling my parents, like, I'm not angry at the coach. I'm not angry at the program. I was so angry at myself because
I felt you weren't good enough.
Felt like I wasn't good enough. One, I felt like everything I did, there was something wrong with it. Like I could never just do something decent enough for that coach. But it got to a point where I was so angry at myself because after everything that I went through, I still wanted to be out on the field. Like that's crazy, right? Like I was like, man, like there was times where I'm like, God, I would be crying in class because I had to go to softball, but then I'd be like, I'm the first one on the field, right? And the last one to leave because I want to be there. So it was like a huge mental battle. But I was just telling my parents today, actually, when we were driving out here, I was telling them that like now I see the game so purely. I'm so blessed because at that time in my life, I wasn't going to play anymore. I was just going to go.
So you did feel like giving up at a point.
Yeah. I mean, every athlete goes through a point in their life where they're like, yeah, this is a lot. Like, I'm not good enough. Like, I'm never going to make it anywhere, whatever. And I told my parents that, like, a lot of it had to do with the fact that I just felt like I was draining myself, like, just mentally. And
so you can do too much.
Yeah. I mean, you can. Like, I've talked to so many college coaches where they're like, you know what? Sundays, our mental health day. Like I tell my girl to like my team, my girls on my team to don't step on the softball field. Like take that day and be a human for once. Softball takes over so much of your life. Like me personally, I hate to say it, but sometimes I like determine my self-worth on how good I play. So if I'm playing super bad that day, God, like I go home and I'm like, God, I suck at everything. I can't even do my homework right now. Yeah. Right. It gets so crazy. But
I think a lot of kids, you know, they're trying to make a point. They're trying to become the next, let's say NFL, if you're in the NFL, NBA, or whatever you're trying to do, that you do put a lot of stress on your body and on yourself. And I don't think if you don't know how to balance it, it could be pretty bad. We've seen, sadly, you know, a lot of athletes that we've lost because of mental health, right?
For sure. And I'm so blessed now that I'm living in a generation where mental health is something that is talked about.
And you know what? I'm glad you bring that up because not only in our generation, but in our culture. The Latino
Yes.
community does not believe
Definitely.
in mental health.
I
You
agree.
going to see a psychologist is because you're crazy,
Yep.
and
Uh-huh.
and you don't have enough to do in your life. So
Yeah,
that's something that we do definitely need to address in our community. And I'm glad
I
that
agree.
you're talking about it and you're
Yeah,
able
and
to.
it's something that like um me and my family, I think we advocate a lot because it's something that we've been through. I mean, it's we've all grown up like my family grew up playing this sport, me and my siblings, so we see how much the sport can take out of a person and we've seen the people get burnt out. I mean, we I've seen my friends that could play college softball and they just didn't because they felt like they just weren't good enough. And that wasn't the case at all. It was just the way they viewed themselves in that sport,
Right.
right? During all this time when I was gonna quit, I joined a travel team, and the coach was like, you know what, like I tried out. I tried out way before I was deciding that I wanted to quit and take a break, whatever. I made the team and I was like, "Eh, okay, like, yeah, I'll go. Like, I'll do it. That summer going into my junior year, the coach saw me at practice and she was like, you know what? Stay after practice. I need to talk to you. And I was like, yeah, whatever. So I stayed after practice and she was like, I heard that you don't want to play softball anymore. And I was like, no, I don't. And I was like, well, I was like, I always will. I mean, that's going to be in my blood. I mean, I'm going to want to be on the field no matter what. And I was like, but how much can I put myself through this? Like, how do I continue doing this? And she was like, you know what? Give me this summer. She's like, give me the summer. If you still want to quit by the end of the summer, I'll let you leave. Like, you don't have to play anymore. I won't bug you anymore. Like, that's that. And I was like, yeah, you're right. And it only takes one coach to change how fast you view the game because that summer changed so much about how I saw softball. It changed my love for it and it gave me this confidence that I didn't have before. And that summer, I think I played the best softball that I ever had in my life because one, I think was playing good because I was like, you know, this is my last summer. I'm gonna ball out, right?
Right.
Two, I felt so comfortable with my team and I felt so comfortable with the coaching staff that they built me into a very confident player. And along that way, that coach told me like the biggest revenge, like I was saying, I was so angry at that first coach and I was so hurt. And I was like, man, like, how can you have that much power and take the love of something from a younger athlete? Right. And I was telling her, like, I don't want revenge. Like, I'm not a revengeful person. I was like, I was like, I'm just so angry. And she was like, well, the best revenge you can do is to succeed. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Like, the best revenge I can do is succeed. So everything I feel like that it's like small part of my life has encouraged me so much to do everything else that I have done in my life. I mean, like just even in education, like all throughout high school, I was like, you know what? The best revenge is to succeed. Right, graduated top of my class. I was like, you know what?
Wow.
The best revenge to succeed religiously. I'm going to be more religious. I'm going to be a good follower in Christ and show people that like they can do this too, right? The best revenge is to succeed. And I was like, you know what, softball wise, I'm gonna do the best I can, no matter what I'm going through off the field. Throughout high school, I was one of like the top players and top recruits out of El Paso, and even in like collegiate sports, I have a tough day, and I'm like, you know what, I'm still succeeding, even though didn't do good today, even though I feel like I didn't do my best out here in like my collegiate career. Um, I'm still playing collegiate softball, right?
Right.
So I still sometimes like I'm like, man, like there's a lot of players that would have dreamed of playing collegiate softball, but quit. And I sometimes me and my family we talk about statistics a lot, and the statistics of like making it to collegiate sports are so low, and being a Latina athlete is even lower. So I sometimes like I'm like, man, like today wasn't a win, but I'm still succeeding
But
in
overall,
some
yeah.
aspect of my life. I'm still succeeding in doing something that other people dreamed of, right? And I can be an advocate for those people and tell them like they can do that, right? This like, going being able to play for this team for the USA team, it was something that I since film and I since stats and grades and a bio of myself and why I feel like I'm a good representation for the United States for my state. And I sent it out and I told my parents, like, you know what, if it's meant to be, it'll be, right? Like things always happen a certain way. And if it doesn't work out that way, then at least I tried, right? I can never say that I didn't try. Um, and when I got accepted and the coach finally reached back to me and was like, you know what, like we want you on the team. Like we really want
Now,
you.
what are the odds, Isabella, of getting picked? I mean, you are competing
Crazy.
with the rest of
Everyone.
the United States,
Yeah.
correct, to represent
Mm-hmm.
U.S.
So when I when I sent out my email.
Do you know how many people
tried out? I don't know how many people tried out, but there were in-person tryouts, right? Anybody can come and try out in person and be in front of the coaches, put a face to your name, right? After that,
does that have an advantage?
oh,
do you
for
think?
sure, yeah. I, softball and every other sport that you join, like your physique makes such a big difference, right? So seeing a person like in front of your eyes and they're like, I'm a outfielder, and you're like, you're not built like an outfielder, and that can turn a coach away so fast.
Really?
Yeah, the way you carry.
So this is not only sports. This is also looks. Like we want to have.
I've been on
good ratings and nice pictures, right?
Yeah, I've been on college visits where I'm walking around campus looking at the school and like asking questions, and I can see the coach staring at my parents and staring at like little like details about them, right? And I remember asking my coach one time, and I was like, why are they doing that? Why are they staring at my dad's calves? Like, that's weird, right? And they're like, no, because genetically you can have that. You can have legs that look like that, right?
Really?
So they can base like take genetics from what your parents have and help you figure out kind of what you would look like in a couple years. And it's so crazy. And sometimes like I'll be like, man, I'm too short. Like I'm not a first baseman. I'm only 5'3", right? But I know that compared to another second baseman, I'm average. Every other second baseman's about my height, my build. Every slapper's about my height, my build, unless they're really tall and really fast and they're outfielders. So it really depends on how you're shaped. And it's crazy because that's something that's in every sport, right? So they had in-person tryouts. Everyone tried out. They took a few high school players, right? They accepted them then. They had another tryout. Then they sent out an email, right, to some of the travel ball coaches and saying that they were looking for only four collegiate softball players. Okay. So my travel ball coach was like, you know what? I'm going to send it to my graduating class that already graduated. They're playing college softball. So he sent it out through like Facebook, and it's like told like, you know what, collegiate players, if you play for the Firecrackers out of El Paso, like here's an opportunity. They're taking college players now. My dad sent it to me, and I was like, like there's no way. Like 4 out of all the United States, that sounds crazy. And I was like, amongst just my team alone, like my travel ball team, all of us played college ball. So I was like, there's 10 girls right there that would try out and have an amazing chance of making it because they're all brilliant players. So I was like, you know what, like I'll send film, right? I'll send the film. I'll send the stats. They looked at stats. They looked at film. They looked at grades. They looked at our majors, what we're majoring in college. They looked at
your credit score, probably.
credit score, our social security. No, they wanted references. We had to get coaches to reach out to them. They wanted a biography of ourselves and why we believe we're a best fit to represent the United States in this way. So I sent it. I was at training one day and I was stretching and I was typing away trying to figure out why I felt like I was a good American. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna write whatever I believe, and I'm gonna write my passion for the game. I mean, that's gonna carry, I feel like, a lot alone, right? So I sent it out and I was like, well, there it goes. Like there's nothing I could do now, right? The coach reached back out.
Did you believe you were gonna make it? I mean, obviously you dream of it. No. But deep inside, did you really have that, okay, I'm going to be picked?
No, I didn't.
You just kind of were like, I'm just going to do it to write something else on my resume.
Yeah, I was like, that was my whole thing. Like my parents were like, you nervous? Like you just sent out the film. Like have they reached out? Like what's going on? And I was at practice and I was like, look, like my life right now is the same. Whether they accept me or not, I still have to be here practicing, right? Like I was like, nothing's gonna change. Like nothing's gonna like automatically.
If it didn't, it wouldn't change. But if it did, you
like
know, your
I
life
was like,
would be...
even if it did, like I was like, I'm still gonna be here throwing a ball around, trying to like fix my glove work. I'm like, I'm still gonna be here lifting weights. Like nothing's gonna change in this instant. Like it's not something I can stress about. Right. So I sent it out. The coach messaged me back and he was like, you know what, we'll get back to you. I need to send this to my other coaching staff. We'll look at your film, look at everything you've sent. And I was just like, that's it. I was like,
so they're not coming back.
I was like, yeah. I was like, nah, that's whatever. And a few days passed, maybe like 3, 4, and I was fielding some ground balls at my training facility. And my watch kept buzzing, and I was like, God, like this is so annoying. And I looked down and I see the coach's name, right? Like in a little Gmail thing. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh man, I was like, he's gonna tell me I didn't get accepted. I was like, that sucks. And I was like, right now when I'm at practice, like I'm trying to focus here. And I filled a few more ground balls and I was waiting in line and I was like, man, I wonder what he said. I wonder what he said. I wonder what he said. And I couldn't like get my brain to stop thinking about it. I was like, man, like, what did he say? What did he say? What did he say? And I kept missing ground balls. And I was like, I'm not even feeling good anymore. So I was like, you know what? I told my coaches, I'm going to go get water and I will be right back. So I left and I went to go get water and I just went to go look at my phone and I opened it up and it like the first like headline was like, you're going to Cuba. And I was like, that's kind of crazy. And I was like, oh, this is fake. Like, this is fake.
Spam.
Yeah, I was like, no way. So I opened it up and I continued reading. And he was like, you know what? You are one of 4 collegiate athletes, one of 12 like players out of all the United States that have had this opportunity. Like just detailing. And he was like, we picked based off of position and you were the best second baseman that we've seen so far. And I was like, that's amazing. Like, wow. And I was like reading and I like reread it like 15 times. All the words lost all their meaning by like the 20th time, right? So I sent a screenshot to my parents and I was like, look what I just got. Like, this is kind of crazy. And my parents were so happy. They were texting me, blowing up my phone, trying to call me because they were at work. And I was like, man, like, what are the odds, right? Like, I was like,
Right.
I don't know how many girls tried out. I don't know how many like were denied. I don't know how many girls, but I do know one of 4 collegiate athletes, and the other girls are from like Oregon, from Florida, from Washington, like different places. And I was like, that's crazy. But 1 to 12, I was like, that's even crazier because a collegiate team is about 25. I was like, they took only enough that they needed based off of position. There's 2 players in almost in every position.
And
And
can you imagine the
utility.
amount of teams and the amount of players in the
Yeah,
United States? I mean, that
exactly.
there are. I
Just
mean, just in your local El
oh,
Paso area,
for
how many
sure.
teams do you have?
Just travel ball, there's about 7, 8. And that's just if you're playing 18U, right? There's 18U, 16U,
Right.
12U, 14U, and it goes down all the way until Pee Wee. They're like 7 years old, running around with a glove bigger than their faces,
Right. Chasing
right?
around grasshoppers.
Yeah, yeah, playing with grass and stuff. But collegiately, I recently right now I'm a red shirt at my college, which means I'm not playing this season. It was so tough for my family and for me because this is the first time I've never not played. But I'm looking to transfer and like looking for another school that I can play softball at and finish my athletic and collegiate career there. And I was talking to one of these recruiters that's helping me like talk to coaches and stuff, and he sent to me a list. Okay, the list is of almost 2,000 colleges that have softball in their
Wow.
schools amongst all divisions, right? I was telling my parents, and I was like, 2,000, that's a lot, right? But that's not amongst the schools that he believed I wouldn't be a fit for. Like schools that he thought, like, you know what, you can do a little better.
A little
Like,
better. Yeah.
let's aim high, and if we don't reach that, that will. So I was telling my parents, I calculated about almost 3,000 schools just in the United States alone that have softball.
Wow.
And yeah, you're competing against other girls and other like teams here in the States, but alongside me right now at my university, there's 3 girls from Italy. So now you're not competing just girls in the United States. You're competing worldwide against girls that want to play in collegiate softball in America.
Right.
Yeah, my brother's playing like, alongside guys from Puerto Rico and guys from China and Japan. Like it's crazy. I mean, this sport brings in so much culture that like you have to be the best at what you do. And so
And that makes it even more competitive. I
yeah.
mean, it's
Oh,
not
for
just,
sure.
in your city or in your area.
Yep.
They're competing with the world.
Yeah. So
So you when do we finally pack up and go to Cuba?
July. July
July.
31st. Yes. So July 31st. So I didn't mention this, but I've never met any of the girls on this team.
Really?
Yes. I've
So
only
do you are y'all going to meet before we start playing? Or
So
y'all go straight to the field?
we had a Zoom call, right? I saw the head coaches, met all them, saw little screens about this big of every girl.
Blurry images of
yeah,
yeah.
right, of like a Zoom call, and they were like, "All right, we'll see you in July," and I was like, "All right, yeah, I guess." So we were looking at the itinerary they sent out. July 31st, we head out to Cali. That's where we're meeting in California. The coach owns like a little field there that we can practice on, right? We get out there, we have a practice, we meet the team.
Finally.
Finally, after 4 months of just nothing, right? I know their names. We got a roster, so I know there are other girls on the team. It's
Do you
not
have a
just
number?
me. Do have a number. I'm number 3. That too. My number is super superstitious. Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you get to pick your number?
It was a first come first serve type thing, and they said it on the Zoom call as well, and they were like, send in your numbers whenever y'all want. If the number's taken, the number's taken. And my dad texted and was like, send in your number right away, and I was like, okay, I will.
So are you number 3 all the time?
I want to be number 3 all the time. That's the goal.
That's the goal.
I have been number 3 pretty much my whole entire life until I got out to collegiate softball.
Okay.
Last year I was number 4, and this year I was supposed to be number 1. But I told my coach when I committed this year, and I was like, the girl that has number 3, and I was like, yeah, next year
gotta
it's
go.
mine. Yeah, I was
she's
like,
gotta
she's
go. That's mine.
graduating, right?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, and I was like, it's my number. And I was like, don't worry, I'll change jerseys next year. And he was like, that's kind of crazy. And I was like, no, it's not. So we got our numbers, and my dad was like, send in your number. And he was bugging me, and I was like, yeah, I will. But like every teenager, don't listen.
You did not send your number.
Did not send my number. And I remember the Zoom call ended. It was like 2 hours later, and I was like, oh my God, my number. And I was like, I'm not going to get number 3. And I was like, everyone loves that number, right? So I sent in my number, and the coach, he just liked it. And I was like, great. And I was like, I'm not going to get the number. And then he sends out the roster, and I was like,
number 3.
And I sent it to my parents, and I said, look, I got my number and everything. So I'm so happy that happened, because my dad would have flipped out on me, because he would have been like, I've been telling you for hours, and you just did not listen.
And you would have said, no, I did, Dad. Somebody must have beat me to it.
Yeah, I would have been like, I totally sent it when you told me. Don't even worry. Anyway, so when we get out there, we'll meet the team, hold like an hour or 2 practice, just like figure out team stuff, so we're not out there just running around crazy.
How many days do you stay in Cali?
1.
Yeah.
So in that one day, we hold the practice.
So less than 24 hours.
Less than 24 hours. We hold less than 24 hours. I travel to Cali, right? Because I'm from El Paso, so I got to catch a flight out there, right? So I'll catch a flight to Cali, get off the plane, go to a practice, right? Practice for about 2 hours, meet the team, finish, change into like our USA gear stuff, hold interviews and media day, take pictures and do all that stuff throughout the rest of the afternoon, whatever. Go back to my hotel and leave first thing that next morning to Cuba, and stay there for the next 7 days and play softball and try to figure out if we are actually a team or just random girls from across the country that have nothing correlating to each other besides softball.
So within 24 hours, you have to become a team. You have to become familiar with each other.
Yeah.
You have to do everything to represent and
the best way possibly can. We have to figure out like, okay, like you don't like to be called that. Your nickname is this, and remember each girl's name, and remember where they're from, and remember how old they are, because we're all different ages, and remember what you're studying. Remember what school you go to, what high school you're from, your dog's name, your favorite
So this
color.
gets harder. Even, I mean, not only the pressure that you have representing the United States and playing the sport, but playing per se with complete strangers. When you're growing up and you have practices every day, you get to learn the players, you get to learn, different things, the way they are. Here, it's like you're going to be sent with random people, and you're going to represent the United States and play ball.
And try to win.
And you have 24 hours to
less.
Figure it out.
We have a 2-hour
practice
to figure out. Yeah, and I always said like there's so much like relationships on the field. Like my travel ball team, we have a facility back home, and we would practice almost every day, about 4 hours after school. Every Sunday we had a practice from like 8 in the morning to like 1 in the afternoon. We would travel every weekend and spend hours in cars together, hours in hotels. We'd spend hours on the softball field. So I felt that my travel ball team, like me and my shortstop, me and my second baseman, we were the best friends. Like I don't like something happens in my life, and there's
so you knew how to communicate with each other and everything.
Yeah. So like would shift a certain way on the field, and the girl next to me would do the exact same thing without me even having to say anything,
Mhm.
because we just knew so well what was going to happen next, and we knew each other as athletes. So like even now, like one of my best friends, she plays collegiate softball at Southern. I have a problem and I'll text her. I'm like, bro, I cannot hit a ball to save my life today. Like I all the softball training I've had my whole life out the wall. I do not know how to swing the bat. And we'll like break down things, and she'll be like, oh, okay, this and this worked for you last time, because we know each other so well. We don't even have to be in the same state. She's in Louisiana and I go to school in New Mexico, and we still help each other and still figure things out because we know each other so well. So that makes the game a little bit easier. Pitchers and catchers have one of the best relationships because the catcher needs to know their pitcher front, like behind their hand, because that's something that is so like intricate of the game, right? Your outfielders need to know, like, oh, if the ball gets hit here, do I have to sprint as hard as I can, or can this girl get there before me? It's so much details. So 2 hours to figure all that stuff out. 2 hours to figure out, like, okay, if I'm playing next to this girl, if she moves backward, do I move closer to second? Do I move closer to first? I mean, there's so much ground to cover. And that's why I feel like it was so like hard to make the team. It's so like little of us because they wanted to
So
pick
they're
girls.
looking for people that
Yeah, that
can
are
respond and can adapt
for sure.
immediately
Yeah,
to
girls that
something new.
are very high softball IQ. I mean, it's softball is universal, right? It doesn't change. That's one of my favorite things about it. It's so consistent, right? So like if your softball IQ is high, you can play at any level and you can play with anyone whenever. It doesn't matter. I mean, softball is the same
Mhm.
if whether I'm playing here in Tyler or if I'm in Connecticut playing. It's still softball, right? But it's more of knowing like the person, like how hard do I have to throw to this person? How close do I have to stand to be a relay and make the play at home? How close, stuff like that. But I mean, if you that's why it's so more important that these girls got picked, right? Because now we're like a very select few of girls, right? The coaches made their decision based off of how talented they believed we were and how fast that they believed we can pick up what they're putting down, right? I mean, we still have plays. The coaches come up with their own plays. Every coach has their own millions and millions of plays that every team has to remember. So now during that practice, if he has a specific button defense, we have to memorize when he calls it what we got to do. So it's 24 hours to figure out media and interviews and figure out practices and figure out my hotel and figure out trying to leave El Paso that morning to fly super early that Friday, I think it is, whatever the 31st is, and
Right.
figure all that out. But it's interesting.
So you have from now till when to raise your $10,000. I know it's not the 31st because by the 31st you got to be
No,
flying out.
no,
Sure,
no.
there's deadlines, right?
Yeah. So we actually just had our first deadline, and we dropped a lot of money for that because they wanted to make sure that all the girls that are going, like all the girls that can meet the deadline, like on the roster are going. So you can make the team, and if you don't make that first deadline, you're not going, right? Because that's your deposit, that's your fee in,
Right, right,
right?
right.
So I made my first deposit, and the next ones are all due within the next month. So after that, the next one's hit like right back to back to back to back. So we are fundraising. We're trying our best to like spread through social media and like try to bring awareness like from like my hometown and like try to get like people out there to talk about it and get companies to sponsor and stuff
Right.
like that. But it's coming so fast. It's
But
so
you don't only
quick.
represent El Paso. That's your hometown, right?
Yeah, I don't know
Do you love
more.
El Paso?
I love El Paso. It's one of my biggest flexes. I tell everyone that like I'll be like walking somewhere and they're like, "Oh, where are you from?" Like El Paso. I'm like, "You have to go to El Paso." I'm like, "If you've never been to El Paso, you've never truly been to Texas."
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, now you're making me
that's
think.
my
Okay, so
that's
I've
my
never been to El
biggest
Paso, but most of the
yeah
people say it's dry, it's dirt, it's
desert.
dead, it's a desert out there. Tell me
Yeah.
something else that would attract people to El Paso if they have not been.
The
What are we finding
culture.
besides you down
The
there?
culture. I feel like there is no other place where you can be driving on the highway and see the like beautiful, like different colored houses on a mountain because you're looking straight into Juarez. You're seeing culture from both sides of what like a true lifestyle is in El Paso. You get everything. You get the language, you get the food, you get the clothing, you get the religion, you get all everything, every aspect of culture you find in El Paso, and it's home. I mean, there's no other place that I felt where the people are so inclusive and the people are so genuinely like, oh, you're hungry? Oh, just come to my grandma's house. Like, your grandma's house. I'm like, I just met you. And they're like, it's okay. She'll cook you food. I'm like,
She's got enough.
yeah, she's been cooking all day. And I'm like, okay. But it's every part of El Paso, even like the far like places like Tornillo or Favens, like those places have so much culture. And I feel like when you get further out in Texas, you lose some of that culture. And sometimes I feel like it's so important to remember that
So
like,
you're judging us, East Texans.
no, never that. Never,
You
never
hear
that. No, no, no. But I feel like it's super important. And like there's so many things that like as a community, El Paso just overall wins all the time. I feel like high schools, you've never seen more high school pride than a Lower Valley High School in El Paso. Like when I ended up moving schools my junior and senior year, and I never saw a high school like that before in my life. Like football games were packed. People were standing up trying to watch the game. Grandparents and great grandparents and aunts and uncles and babies that are 1 month old were there trying to watch a football game for a football team that didn't win any games. So like it's crazy because the culture always shows so much dominance of how family oriented we are.
It is. I think
right?
that's
I
the
mean,
biggest thing with our culture. You know, I
yeah,
think many other, it's like you turn 18, all right, bye.
yeah,
And our culture teaches us the total opposite. You're 18, you're 30, here, stay here. You know, you still
yeah.
want to be around.
No, exactly. And so, like every time someone asks me, like, "Oh, but like a border city is the same anywhere. Like you can find a border in Cali, you can find a border in Arizona." I'm like, "No, but no border is more open to everyone than El Paso. Like no border will open their doors and their arms the way El Pasoans do." And I'm so proud of that because I can go anywhere and know like I have so much respect and so much integrity because I'm from El Paso, because they taught me that. They taught me not to judge others. They like everything that comes with being like Mexican American. I feel like it proves the fact that like we are so like family oriented, so cultural oriented. We are so devoted to like the people around us. Like I have friends that I'm not even in El Paso anymore. Haven't been home in a long time because of school. And my mom will be like, "Oh, your friend stopped by for the day." And I'm like, "The house?" I'm like, "I'm not there." And she's like, "No, we fed her and she went back home." I was like, "That's crazy." Like I'm like,
Right.
"What?" And I talk to my other friends out like where I go to school and they're like, "No, we
Yeah,
don't.
no,
No, that doesn't
that's
happen where I'm
weird.
from."
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, "No, why would your mom sit down and watch a movie with your friend?" And I'm like, because my friend's mom would do the same for me. Right. So I'm so proud of it. And if we take away the culture, the city alone, you've never seen sunsets like you've seen in El Paso. I'll tell you that. And I, there's always like little things like I'll be away at school for a while and I'll come home and I see the star on the mountain and I'm like, wow, like I'm home. Like I'm safe now. Like I can release that breath, like the breath of
Right.
like air that I was holding in that I didn't know. I can like let go and be like, okay, yeah, I'm safe now. Like I'm okay. Right. I'll be like driving around with my friends and my friends are all talking and gossiping like girls do. And I'll be out the window, like with my head just staring at the sunsets because they're so beautiful. And it truly just like brings together how beautiful being from El Paso is. But I will agree, it's dry. It's hot. It's there's we don't see. We were driving to the station here today, and I was telling my
So
parents
you're
like,
being shocked by the storm. That
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. This I was out like looking like a sad little music video at the car, like staring at the rain and looking at the trees,
You're
and
like,
I
what
was
is this?
yeah, and I was like, man, I haven't seen rain in a long time, and I was like, I haven't seen trees like this in a long time. Like I like there's a lot of things that like shock me a lot. Like
Mhm.
out at school, I saw trees actually turn orange.
You saw
Yeah.
fall.
I saw fall and I was yeah. And I was telling my parents, I was like, it looks like a little kid's coloring book. Like they're actually yellow. Like I what?
Right.
And I was like, it's actually red. Like the leaves are piling up in like big piles. And I was like, they're raking outside. And I was like,
What's a rake?
I was like, what are you gonna rake in El Paso? Cactus pines? And I was like, that's kind of crazy.
You know, funny is because I remember as a kid in Mexico, they would sweep the dirt. I don't know if you ever saw that. They had these
Oh,
special brooms made out
don't
of
even.
uh like twigs or I don't know what they are. And people would be raking their
Oh
dirt because it would make it pretty. Like you fix the
no,
field, right? You rake the field.
you have no. if my mom was sitting in here today, she'd be laughing just as much as I am because one time I got in trouble
For not raking the dirt.
No, I got in trouble. I don't remember why, but my mom was like, "You are gonna clean the house, right? Because that's all Mexican moms' punishment,
Right.
right?"
Yeah.
So I was like, "Whatever, I'll clean the house." And I'm angrily just like putting stuff away and trying to get her to be quiet. And she's yelling at me, and then she goes, "You know what? You're not even cleaning right." And I was like, "I'm fine. I'm not cleaning right." I was like, "Okay, yeah." And then she was like, "Here," and she hands me a broom, and I was like, "Okay." And she goes, "Go outside and sweep." And I was like, "Sweep outside?" And she was, "Yep." She's like, "There's dirt on the walkway." And I was like, "The walkway outside." And she's like, "Yeah, go sweep it." And I was like, "Where do I put the dirt?" And then she was like, "Wherever the dirt came from." I was like,
So you're separating the dirt
I
from the
was like,
rocks.
"Alrighty then." I was like, "How far do I have to sweep?" She goes, "All the way down the driveway. Sweep it." And I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "Fine, whatever."
So did you get that special broom?
No, I got like a dusty, crusty, super old broom I've never seen in my life. I was like, no way, girl. I was like, this isn't gonna sweep up the biggest dirt. Like what? So I was like, you know, I'm not even gonna argue with her. And I was like, whatever. I know I'm in trouble. I wasn't cleaning correctly to her. And I was like, whatever. I'll go outside. I walk outside like my house. It's like 30-mile-per-hour winds. I was like, no way I'm gonna sweep dirt in 30-mile-per-hour winds. So I was out there for like 3 hours trying to sweep dirt. And every time I would sweep it, it would fly right back where I swept. I was like, there's no way. So there came to a point where I just sat there like on our little walkway and I was like, yeah, I'm not sweeping anything. And she walked outside and she was like, it still looks so dirty out here. And I was like, oh my. I was like, I know, mom. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I was like, I don't know what to do. And she was like, if I were you, I'd start being resourceful. She's like, I'd figure it out. She's like, because I want this walkway clean. And I was like, okay. I was like, I'll figure something out. I don't know.
So you need to go to Juarez
to get the
and
broom.
get the broom.
Okay.
You know, it's a
That's what I
special
should have
broom.
done.
Yeah.
With the 3 hours that I sat there angry.
Yeah, you could have crossed over,
came
back,
with
gotten
the broom.
and then done your job.
I was so mad. And now they joke around about it. Like they think it's so funny. Like it'll be windy and my mom would be like, "You want to go sweep outside?" I'm like, "Really?" I'm like, "That's not funny. It's not funny at all." And she was like, "I don't know why you were so mad that day." And I was like, "Me?" I was like, "I was mad." And I was like, "You were yelling at me for no reason."
So is it still Saturday cleanup day around the house, turn on the music kind of thing? You know, our
it's
culture.
Sundays.
Oh, Sundays. Okay,
After
Sunday
mass, you come home, you're all dressed up. My mom is super nice to you after mass, and she's like, "You want to go get menudo?" And we're like, "Yeah, let's go get food, right?"
And once she feeds you,
Yeah, and then after she's sitting at the kitchen table and she's looking around, and we're like trying to ignore it because we're like, we don't want to clean.
Oh,
here
it comes, here it comes.
Yeah, and then she's like, "The dishes aren't done," and I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, we could do them all week." And she's like, "No," and the TV set's dusty, and the floor needs to be mopped. And your rooms are a mess. And your closet's
and the wall
not
trim
organized.
and get a toothbrush.
Oh, you have yes. And she was like, the dog has been outside. There's poop. You need to go clean outside. And there's weeds. And my mom doesn't believe in like weed killers. She believes in manual labor. So we're outside on our hands and knees pulling weeds. And she's like, yeah. And then the garage is dirty too, right? And she was like, there's stuff all your baseball and softball stuff are all over the floor, and like that's messy. And she was like, there's dirt everywhere because you guys bring in dirt from practice. She's like, go change. I'm like, oh god. And then I'm changing, and then I hear music downstairs. And I'm like, okay, we're gonna be cleaning
it's clean
all
time.
day, all day.
So what's the cleaning music?
Mexican, always Mexican music, always, and it's always super loud and blasting. But it's never like my generation Mexican music.
Oh yeah, no.
I can never play Bad Bunny in front of my parents, and they'd be like, "Oh, that's a good song, right?"
Hey, what you know, now they've done the Bad Bunny Frontera, you know, kind of things they just released. So, you know, maybe you can kind of like slowly.
Yeah, but if I I bought a new set of headphones recently. And I saw my parents at the airport yesterday when I met them, and I was like, "Hey guys, look at the new headphones!" And I was listening to Bad Bunny, and I put it on my dad's head, and he was just shaking. He was like, "What is this? This is not even Spanish anymore." Like he was like, he's not even saying words, and I was like, "No, he is, right?" And then later on, I was like, "Oh, listen to this song." It was No Se Va by the Grupo Frontera. So I put it on my dad. He's like, "Oh, see, this is a song. This is a real song." And I was like, whatever.
Mm.
But every time we ever cleaned the house, it was never Mexican music that me and my siblings, our generation, liked. It was always songs that like my dad would be like, "Oh, so I remember one time when I was a kid and my uncle was drinking and we were all dancing." And I was like, "Why are we listening to this right now, right? But it's songs that like now I'm like, oh my god, that's actually a really good song, right?
And,
And I'm
and
like,
they'll bring
yeah,
memories back, right? Later on
yeah,
when you
of
grow up,
course, for
right? I
sure.
remember when I was raking
Yeah,
the dirt outside,
it's
listening to,
tough. Yeah.
yeah.
I no, but outside I didn't get music.
Oh,
No,
outside
they
you don't get
closed the
music.
door. No.
Oh, okay. Well, never
It
mind
was
then.
quiet listening to wind and me just grunting the whole time because
Trying to figure it out.
yeah. And then later on I was like, yeah, mom, it's not happening. And she goes, here, let me show you a trick. And she wets the dirt with water and she goes, you're just dumb. And I was like, oh. I was like,
See, you have to
I was like,
learn.
that's why you're the mom. And
Yeah.
I was like, and then when my kids get in trouble, I'll do the same thing. Let them suffer for 4 or 5 hours and then go help them.
Right. Well, you got to
Yeah.
learn. You got to
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah. Now I know how to sweep dirt, thankfully.
Well, now we have to visit El Paso
Yes,
and
you
sweep dirt
definitely do.
and do all
And
those
sweep dirt and get some
and expect to have
real,
a clean house
real
and
Mexican
wonder
food.
why there's dust in the house when you live in El Paso, right?
I,
It's just
I don't understand that. Like people come over and my mom's like, you need to clean the house. And I'm like, okay, the person's not gonna swipe their finger along the floorboard and tell you the corner of your house and the corner that you haven't seen in years is very dirty. And my mom's like, you never know. I'm like, I know.
And you know what? And you never you never know.
I'm like, I know, mom. I'm like, I'm pretty sure they're not gonna go under our sofa and like sweep and see dirt.
Hey, and your mom will check if you move the sofa when
she
you
will.
know, swept and mopped under there.
She will.
Yeah.
And she'll make sure that under my bed is completely clean and all my clothes are hung up and my laundry basket's completely empty. She's one of those parents that will check. But this goes back to everything like, is your house very clean? Yeah. My apartment, me and my brother keep it very clean, right? Because we know she comes in without us knowing, oh my God. And it's a mess.
That's the end of it.
Yeah. So like
and that teaches you, I think, a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
You may not see it as a kid when you're growing up and you're just like, oh my God, my mom, my dad, they're just getting onto me. We're just getting in trouble all the time. You know, they're just too strict, or, you know, we don't realize that until we grow up and you're like, okay, that taught us structure for other things that are coming in life. And then when you have your own kids, you realize, okay, mom and dad were not exaggerating, you know. Raising teenagers is hard. You know, I have one that is, you know, like thinking I'm the worst thing ever, you know, because he's got to have rules. So it teaches you.
Oh, yeah.
But it also, I think it becomes harder being a Latina.
Oh,
because, you know, I think Selena in that movie said it very well. You know, you got to be more American than the Americans, and you got to be more Mexican than the Mexicans. And they're both judging you because
and if
you're too Mexican for the Americans and too American for the Mexicans. You know,
and even now, like you're talking about my Spanish, right? And like you put it perfectly, it's Spanglish. There's like at my university right now, I tutor sign language, but in that same tutoring center, I'm tutoring sign language and they're tutoring Spanish, right? And they'll say chamara, and I'm like, what's a chamara, right? And I'm like sitting there, I'm like, what the heck? And then the students leave, and I'm like, you said chamara, and they're like, chaqueta. I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, oh no, that's not. I'm like, my Spanish isn't proper. And if I go and I talk to like my grandpa and I said words like neta, oh my God, my grandpa would be so mad at me. He'd be like, that's not even a word. He's like, stop, like, don't, right? But then if I like went out to New Mexico and I'm talking to my friends, they're like, hey, do you know you have an accent? And I'm like, I don't have an accent. And they're like, yeah, you have a very Mexican accent. And I'm like, no, I don't. Like, I hardly ever speak Spanish. Like my parents will speak Spanish to us, but I never answer in Spanish. I'm like, I just answer in English. But they're like, no, you have an accent. And I'm like, no. Or like something happens to like, we know Slape has good food at her apartment. I'm like,
just because I'm Mexican?
I'm like, I do, but anyway. Yeah. So me and my brother, we talk about it so much. How
it's
like
a hard life, yeah.
Yeah, like you just never know where you really fit in, right? Like you're like, yeah, like I always say like I'm a proud Mexican American, right? But then like talking to my friends, I'm like, man, I have nothing that relates to them, right? But then I go back home and I can relate to all my friends except my friend that's from Mexico, and we're like talking. I'm like, man, I can't relate to anything with you either. Like, I'm like, man, I only relate to the kids that are border city kids. And I'm like, but even at that, like their experience of being a Mexican American is so different from mine, right? And even like with everything going on with softball, I was telling my parents how like as a Latina and even like the males, like you were kind of forced to stay home, right? Like we just talked about how like family is so important to our culture.
Mhm.
Religion is so important to our culture. So leaving home, man, that's hard, right? And it's not hard because you're gonna miss your family. Yeah, I mean, everyone misses their family, but it's more like, why didn't you stay home? Why didn't you stay home and go to school close to home? Why didn't you get a job that's close to home where you can live with your parents?
Right.
Right? And that's something that like me and my siblings, we worked so hard. Our education wise, softball, career wise, everything that we did, we worked that much harder so we can leave. Right? And it sounds so crazy because people are like, well, do you really want to go that far? And I'm like, yeah, I do. I'm like, but I also know that my parents, they have supported me and my siblings through that, and they understand like we can't keep them, right? But I'm so blessed for that. One
And
of my
I think they're slowly learning because our culture
yeah,
is like that. I mean,
my
our
sister
culture,
stayed home her first couple of years of college because they didn't want her to leave, right?
my family, even with my parents, watching them, my grandmother had a big enough piece of land that everybody built a house there.
Yep.
And that was the
Yeah,
culture thing. Your parents
exactly.
want you to stay. Your parents want you to, oh, I got enough terreno back there, mijo. Hazte una
Yep.
casita,
Yeah.
just build something back there,
For,
so you don't leave. And that's kind of what we grew up. And I think that's part of what has taught us to be so close.
for sure.
I hope we don't lose that. I hope everybody learns
Yes.
the boundaries and everybody goes live
Yes.
their own. We still don't learn.
I think it's so important. And I was telling my brother about it because transferring schools. So one of the schools that I really want to go to, or the few schools I really want to go to, they're far. 33 hours away from El
Oh
Paso.
wow.
24, like driving. It's far. It's a travel, right? And my brother's not happy about it. He's the only boy out of like three of us, and he's not happy. He's like, no, you need to, no, you're not going that far. You're not gonna be happy. You're not going that far. You're not going that far. He's like, I would never let my daughter go that far. But then I told him like, but I'd come back, right? Like I feel like that's so important to mention is the fact that like we can leave. Any person can leave home. But I feel like it's in our culture, it's raised in us. We were born in a family that's so family oriented that even if we do leave, we're gonna come back.
Right.
Right? Like I'm gonna miss my mom's carne asada. Like, I mean, we're not gonna get
Right,
that out there, right? Like where else am I
Nobody
gonna
cooks like
find
mom,
that?
obviously.
Yeah, like I'm gonna miss a good bean burrito. Like, I mean, gotta come back to El Paso for that, right? So like I like tell my brother like, yeah, I mean it's scary. Like leaving home's always scary, right? But I was like, but I never said I was going to stay out there, right? Like now I can come back and appreciate my culture even more and appreciate the fact that my mom is up on a Sunday morning, 7 a.m, running around the house, making us get ready and put on a dress for church, right? I mean, I'm not going to get that anywhere else, but it brings me back home, right? Keeps me
Right.
grounded. And I find that so important that like now there's so many like foundations, like the one I work with the USA team with Aya, and there's even one in El Paso called Mija Yes You Can, that empowers Latina athletes or like empowers Latinas all like just in education that they can leave, right? Because even as females, it's so hard to convince your dad like, yeah, I want to go to school across the country. My dad would flip out. He'd be like, no, like there's a community college down the street that you can go to get your
It's going to be the
education.
same thing.
Same thing. You're not missing anything, right? But these organizations are showing Latinas everywhere, right? That like, oh, she did it, right? Like, oh, she's going to school in New York and she's from Cali. Wow, she did it. Oh, she's from El Paso and she's going to Connecticut. Wow, she did it. Like, oh, she's from San Antonio and she's going to California to play softball. She did it, right? So you get these like, oh, she's my age. I've played alongside her. She can, if she can do it, I definitely can, right? And I was telling my parents like I saw it so much in that school I moved to. It was one of like the lower valley schools in El Paso, and I was telling them that there's so many athletes on my softball team that I truly believed could have a collegiate career. They could do it. But one of them, I was talking to her and I was like, you know what? I can talk to coaches for you. And I was like, I'll reach out and like all you gotta do is answer them, like hear them out, right? And a few days later, she comes back to me. She's like, you know what? I don't want to play college softball. And I was like, why not? And she's like, I gotta stay home. I was like, for what? She's like, well, my younger sister is still in school. I gotta like help her. I gotta help my mom like around the house. She's like, there's colleges here in El Paso. I can go to those. And I was like, there's also colleges everywhere else. And I was like,
it's not the answer they wanted.
No, it was not the answer she wanted. She like looked at me crazy and she was like, no. And I was like, all right. But I feel like that comes with just understanding that like you can be culturally like in like embracive, right? Like I'm so proud that I was raised the way I was, and me and my brother, we constantly like say everything we do is to like represent like our family, our culture, to represent like the Mexican Americans in like everywhere, right? So I was telling that friend at that time, and I was like, I'm going out. I'm leaving El Paso. I was like, I'm 17 and I'm gonna leave. And I was like, and I know for a fact one day I will come to my house or swept dirt in the 30-mile-per-hour wind or go to the ranch that my grandpa raised his family in, right? And I was like, I will do that because that's something that is makes me me, and I'm so proud of that. But now I can come back with all the experience that I've learned and all the things that I got to experience and bring it to my city, right? My like I said, like I'm studying social work, right? I want the best education I possibly can in social work so I can come back and advocate for kids along the borderland, right? That's something that's super passionate of mine and something that I feel like needs a lot of improvement. Immigration kids need advocates, right? Their parents, something happens to their parents and visas expire, stuff, this stuff always
Life
happens.
happens, yeah,
Yeah,
for
I mean,
sure.
you can,
And I think it's easy to judge, and then we get into a whole different
yeah,
topic, you know, that
yeah.
that is so hard for some people to
For
understand.
sure. And those kids are screaming. Like all the kids in the borderland that have experienced like their parents going back to Mexico or have experienced like trying to apply for citizenships and stuff like that. Like those kids are screaming for help. But adults don't listen. Right? So I was telling everyone like they're like, why do you want to be a social worker? Like you're not gonna get any money. Like you're gonna have to live very humbly. And I'm like, that's fine. Right? Because like as
You got to carry everybody else's problems and figure
yeah,
out
and they're like, "You'll
everybody's
take stuff
life.
home, like, you'll never be married, you'll live with 17 cats," and I'm like, like, "I don't like cats." I'm like, "I'll figure it out," right? But I tell them, like, there's so many kids that are screaming for help and people don't listen, but the impact that one adult can make when someone is screaming is amazing, right? Like I know at the time, like with all that stuff going on with softball, I was screaming for help, right? And I was like, man, like no one is listening. No one. My parents tried so hard, but I still felt like they weren't listening. It took one coach to completely change the way I saw everything. And that was that person listening to my screaming. It was them advocating for me. So I was like, why can't I do the same? Right? For people in my city, people that I see every day, right, struggling. And like the kids that like one of my best friends, she always says like I have to do good in school. I have to. So I can get a good job. I can afford things so I can bring my parents back. I can do things. I was like, yeah, you're right, right? And I'm like, but no one asks you how you're actually doing. No one cares about how you feel about your parents and how you feel about like worrying one day if like you have to pack up all your stuff or I was like no one cares. And I was like and it's so sad and I always tell my parents like I want to be able to help advocate for that, right? I mean, I'm so blessed to like say that something I've never had to live through, right? But
But
being
can you imagine having to
my
live your
gosh,
whole life here in America and suddenly
terrified.
you got to go to a country you don't know?
You've never been to, right? And I was talking about it the other day in my social work class because I'm the only one from a borderland city, the only one that like sees it firsthand. And I everyone had their two bits, right? Everyone
Right,
has their
right.
opinions. And I was really quiet and my teacher was like, let's hear it from Isabella. Like you haven't said anything. And I was like, it's scary. And I was like, even knowing that like it can never happen to me or my parents. And I was like, I still live with the fear that what if something happens? What if something crazy like out of the blue, like they say, yeah, you're going to Chihuahua. And I'm like, why? And they're like, oh, because your grandpa was born there. And I'm like, oh, but I've never been there. Right. And I'm like, it happens so often where people are going back to Mexico. They've never even been to Mexico. Right. They're born like in Mexico and they come when they're what 2 months old,
Right.
right? They don't even speak proper Spanish. They speak Spanglish. Like I'm like they're more American than anything, but they're going back to a place that they've never even been before and trying to uproot their life and figure out everything and they're leaving friends and leaving family and like the life that they've built for themselves. And everyone in the class got really quiet and they're like, "Yeah, that is scary." And I was like, "Yeah, it's terrifying." And I was like, "But it's always a thing that we can work on, always, right?" I mean, there's so much like in El Paso right now we're seeing so many people like at the border trying to get like us to help them, right? There's so many things that we can fix. And so I always tell them in that class, like, you don't know what can be fixed until you see it firsthand that it's broken,
Right.
right? I can tell you my phone's not working, but until I give it to you and show you that it's not working, you're gonna be like, oh, I know why it's not working, right? But not enough people want to go in and look at it. So it's like a very weird spot where like I feel like I'm so proud to be where I am and be so fortunate enough to have my parents that are so supportive of me leaving. But the only reason why I feel like I can leave is because I know that when I'm done doing what I'm supposed to be
Your
doing,
work is in El Paso.
yeah, there's so much work that needs to be done, right? And there's so much things that I feel like anyone that lives there knows, like, if I leave, there's always a place I can call home that's there, right? So even if I don't end up living in El Paso, everything I'll be doing is going to be helping people that I know that are out there, right? So I mean, that's the only thing I really advocate a lot to like my friends. Like one of my friends, she graduated one in her class out of like thousands of kids. It was a big, big 6A school. And I told her, like, oh, you're going to go to a big university. You're going to get out of here. Go to an Ivy, right? And she was like, no, the engineering program at UTEP is very good. I'll stay home. And she's doing so much. She's going to graduate super soon and at 21 and have her biomechanical something engineer and do all this crazy stuff. And I'm so proud of her. And I always tell her that, like, something that I aspire. She is an empowered, true Latina that is so brilliant in everything she does. And I always tell her, but you're gonna leave, right? Like you're gonna get out of El Paso. You're gonna make a name for yourself. You're not gonna stay here. And she's like, no, well, my parents are here. And I'm like, Anna, I'm like, come on, you can leave. Like they will be just fine without you. Like they don't care when you're gone 7 hours a day at school. And then she's like, but they'll care when I'm gone 365 days of a year. And I was like, no, they won't. I'm like, you're fine. And she's like, no, like, I don't know. She's like, maybe I'll go back to Mexico and like live out there. And I was like, no. And I was like, you're going to want to stay here. And I was like, I was like, we're going to live together and we're going to live in some random city in Seattle and have a dog. And she's like, no. And I'm like, we will. And she's like, no, Bella, like, I really want to stay here and like live with my family. And I'm like, we can do it though. Right. Like, I was like, we're so smart and so independent and empowered because our parents made us that way.
Yeah,
Right.
and that's the reason I think every parent came here, to
For
give their kids a
sure.
better future and for
Exactly.
them to have that many opportunities and make them proud in a way and
Yes.
be successful
Yep.
and you've done it. I mean, you are 19, you said, and you're already going to
Yep.
travel. You're representing the United States. You have a great mind. I mean, just to think, just listening
Thank
to you and
you.
your and the things that you want to
Yeah.
accomplish and the people that you want to help. You know what? It's easy, and we thought we said we were going to do this bilingual, and then we ended up.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
My
So
Spanish is not
this
that
is this is my official crossover into the American market and into English podcasting. Okay, my
Yes.
first English interview.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Mm.
See what you've done?
You're welcome.
Great. Um, it's so easy for people to just forget the needs of others because they don't have them.
Oh,
It's
for
easy to
sure.
judge and compare and say, wait on the other side. And now we're getting into a very political thing, and we're going
Yeah.
to cut that so we don't get in trouble. But I'm glad that you, at your age, are
Sure.
thinking of other people, not just yourself. That
And
sets,
everything.
I mean, it just shows the character,
Even
your
if, like
character,
you said, we
your,
don't like politics. I'm 19. I don't know anything. Couldn't even tell you the
yeah,
last presidents. I've only seen what, two. So like I can't even talk about stuff like that. But like just in softball wise,
humanity. I think that's what you're focusing
yeah,
on. You're not really focusing on
just
politics.
be a good person.
Yeah.
Like be nice to everyone.
And I
Like,
think that teaches also, what your parents have taught you.
oh, for sure. I know like my friends, like I mentioned earlier, I live in an apartment with my brother. My friends are always in and out of my house, eating our food and watching our TV and using our stuff. And I always tell my brother, like, he gets mad because it's always girls, right? And he's like, why are the girls over again? Like, I want to play video games. Why are the girls over again? And I'm like, because mom would have wanted that. Like, mom has raised us in the way that our door is always open, always. And like, I actually, when I left to catch my flight, I had something on my friend's, her little ID card, and I was like, just walk into the house. It's on the table. And she was like, walk into your apartment. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, you want me to knock? And I was like, I mean, you can. And I was like, he'll open the door for you. And I was like, you have hands to open the door too. I was like, yeah, just walk in. And she's like, it's not going to be locked. And I was like, no. And I was like, I'm telling you.
I was just about to ask, do you lock the door or not?
No,
that is one of the things that we've always had. And I think just now recently my parents have locked the door because they moved to a more high traffic highway. But forever, keys to the car stayed in the car.
Yep.
The door usually was unlocked, so you could just walk in
whenever you wanted.
Yeah, front door, back door, whatever.
Uh-huh.
And that's just the way we were raised because we just you say believed in people, we trusted people, and even now I know my wife, like I've left the door wide open and it's just a glass door, and I'm gone to the grocery store, and it's just not too far from town.
I mean, the only
but
time
she'll be like,
yeah,
where are you? I'm at the grocery store. Wow, what's going on? The door is wide open. Yeah, it is. Why?
Mm-hmm.
You left the door wide open. I just came to the store.
I don't. The only time I feel like me and my brother stress about locking is at night.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
yeah.
I'm not gonna get taken in my sleep. That sounds crazy to me. But I'm always telling my brother like the door stays open. They want to like whatever they're gonna steal. What are they gonna steal from me, John? Like your protein shake. I'm like, really?
Hey, it's expensive now. Come on.
It is. But I always tell them, like, I was trying to tell my friend, and she was like, Slape, you're crazy. Like, lock your door. And I'm like, but then you can't get your ID. And then she was like, I don't need it that bad. And I was like, well, it's there. I'm like, I already left. My apartment's unlocked.
I always tell them the same thing. Hey, if you need something out of my car, get it. I'd rather deal with whatever you stole than me having to fix my window or, my door that you've pried open and now my insurance, I got to do a claim. I just.
Or like if I'm grocery shopping, right? I'll go grocery shopping with my friends. And I have my cart full of stuff and it has my bag in it. And I'm like, oh, the bread's in the other aisle, huh? I'll leave my cart. I'll walk and I'll come back.
With the bag?
Yeah, like everything there. Just I'll leave my cart. I'm like right there, right? My friends are freaking out. They're like, Slape, don't leave your cart here. People are gonna take your stuff. And I was like, what are they gonna take?
I haven't paid for it yet.
I was like, they gotta pay for it too. I'm like, what? And I'm like, what do they take from my bag? My university ID? I'm like, what? Like there's nothing nothing is like it's all like material. Like I'm like I can get that back, right? I'm like, they're gonna take my card with 2 cents to my name. I'm like, I'm a college student. Like, what are they gonna take? The ramen in my cart, my macaroni? And I'm like, it's fine. Like, I'm like, I'll figure it out, right? And I'm like, and if they feel the need that they had to take it, maybe they really need it more than I needed it, right? Like, I'm like, it's not like I can figure it out. I mean, I have my phone on me. They're not gonna take that, right? I'm like, I mean, I need that to call my family, whatever. But like, it's so like in El Paso, you see carts everywhere. And people just move around and mind their own business. But it's something that I had to learn so fast that like it's not everywhere.
It's not. It's not everywhere. You know what? A story. I'll tell you a funny story, and I know we got to go. We did an event here at the park, and we were on a sidewalk. Getting stuff in and out, and we stopped and we were like, hey, we need to make sure we get this, we need to make sure we get that. And there was a lady walking. Big shout out to you, lady. You were so rude.
He said you're so rude.
So rude.
So rude.
Well, because we're trying to get this event going and we're trying to get stuff unloaded, and yes, we stopped at the sidewalk and she's walking, but as she's walking I can hear her mumbling, and she's like, grass walking, grass walking, grass. And I'm just like, what is she saying? Until she gets close to her. She gets close to us. And she is pretty much telling us, this is a sidewalk for us to walk. Y'all are blocking it. Get on the grass. But it was like she was singing something. Grass walking, grass walking. So you don't see that type of culture everywhere. And that is one thing that we're big for. That we're just, that's even when you cross the border. Maybe I need to go visit El Paso to compare, because I always say when you cross the border, you feel it. You feel it so different in Mexico. You feel people are so welcoming. Sure. People are outside their yard raking their dirt.
If that happened in Mexico, that lady would have been like, do y'all need help?
Yes.
I do that. Like, I will help you.
And like neighbors talk to each other. People are like, hey, vecino, ¿cómo está? And su hija, and they're just talking, and you don't really know them. They're just your neighbors or people just randomly talking to you. And maybe that's something that's still in El Paso, because like you said, the further you get away, the less you listen. Here in this part of East Texas, I doubt that we really even talk to our neighbor or even know the neighbor. We may have seen him once or twice,
Yeah.
but we lose a lot of that.
I mean,
And I'm glad that you're keeping that alive.
even in El Paso, like where my house is, there's a church like really close by. So you see everyone Sunday morning. It's early. My mom's screaming at us. We're all trying to put on my heels, and my
Can be
sister's
led to
doing
church,
her
you
makeup.
know,
No, right?
because they'll.
Um, and you look around, and everyone in that area is doing the same thing, right? You go to church, you see them there, right? After church, they always have food. So you go and you eat food, and they're there too, and we're talking. And then you see them go back to your house, and you're still talking across the street. My dad has a friend that lives right across from us, and we're all talking. And I noticed when I went out to school, I went to Midland College my freshman year. It's not like that everywhere, right? Like I was sitting at the pew at church one time when I was out there last year, and some lady was talking to me. And this old lady became one of my best friends. And I missed school for a couple weeks because I had or church because I had softball. And I was like, I'm so busy, whatever. She thought I died. She was when I came back, she was like, "Oh my God, you're okay." She's like, "Thank God you're good." And I was like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm fine." But we were talking, and I was like, "Oh, like, are you from here?" And she's like, "Yeah, yeah, I was born and raised." And I was like, "That's awesome." And I was like, "Do you know anybody?" She goes, "I have no idea who any of these people are." And
Wow.
I was like, "Really?" And she's like, "Yep." She was like, I couldn't even, she's like, "Maybe the priest." And he's like, "But even he's new." And I was like, "That's crazy." Because even if I go to like Ogden, New and I go to like Family Dollar, right? I know at least 2 or 3 people that are there,
Oh yeah.
right? And even if I don't know them, I'm in line and I'm like waiting and I'm like, "God, this line's long, huh?" And the guy behind me
And
is
you
like,
start talking,
"Yeah."
yeah.
And he's like, "How long have you been here?" I'm like, "Oh, like 5 minutes." And he's like, "Yeah, me too." And then it gets quiet and he goes, "You from here?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm from here. Yeah, I'm El Paso." And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, El Paso." And then by the time I know it, I'm walking away and I'm like, "Okay, tell your grandma I said that I hope her surgery goes well." And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, whatever."
Right.
But it's not like that everywhere. And it's very like culturally shocking because I expect other people to be the same way.
Right.
Right.
But
Or
even
like,
within our culture, there's some people that are just not like that.
yeah, like I'll go to my friend and I'm like opening the door and I'm like, "God, why did she lock it? Crazy girl." Right. And then she's like, "I live alone." I'm like, "I don't care." What?
Yeah, leave the door unlocked.
I'm like, "That's so rude of you to lock your door." And she's like, "We also live in an apartment complex, like in the middle of nowhere." And I'm like,
Hey, and it's one of those things that I always say, hey, if they're gonna break in, they're gonna break in. A
whether the
door,
door is
yeah, the
locked
door
or
locked or
not.
not, it's not stopping somebody.
Exactly. I tell my
Hasn't
brother
stopped
the
them before.
same thing. Yeah, no, I agree. So it's something that I had to learn like really fast. Like, okay, can't leave my cart with my bag. I'll get yelled at. Have to lock my door apparently whenever I can't talk to strangers when I'm walking in the park. And um I don't know the person sitting next to me at church, and I don't know.
Can you imagine if you changed all that from the way you were raised and you completely became that person?
Oh, that's hard. It's
You know,
so
I wonder how,
difficult.
but I guess we're so used to it. That's
Oh
our
yeah.
norm, you know,
Yeah.
for everybody else that
Or like
is used to living their style that
even like
we're
respectful
crazy.
things. Like I like when if I'm talking to one of my friends and we're having a conversation, I'm like, "Oh yes, sir." And my friend's like, "Bro, like I'm 17." I'm like, "You still deserve the respect, right?"
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, "Whatever." And one of my friends would be like, "Oh, so this and this." And I'm like, "Okay, yes, ma'am." And she's like, "Bro, I'm only a year older than you. Stop." And I'm like, "It has nothing to do with age." I'm like, "I'm showing you
It's
that I
respect,
respect
right?
you, right?" I have college coaches that are telling me like, "Don't call me sir. Like, it's fine." I'm like, "My parents would kill me." Right? And I'm like, they've raised me to be a respectful person. It has nothing to do with age. It has nothing to do with like anything besides the fact that you're a person and I respect your time. I respect your like interest in talking to me, right? And it's something that I could not see like myself not doing or like something like there's so many things. And it goes all the way back like even softball, like little things like I never throw my glove. My glove, I put it down super softly. I
Oh, and
oil
I've
it
seen
all
kids
the
that
time.
just get so mad about their
Just
play that
chuck
just
their
the
stuff.
bat, you know, the
Oh my
glove that
gosh.
is just so disrespectful, you know, lack of sportsmanship per se.
I've never.
And you know, it's irritating too.
Oh
And
yeah.
I get it. You know, you're irritated because a game, you lost a play or you missed a play or whatever. Um, but like you say, the respect for the teammates and
Yeah.
everybody
And it
that's there.
even like if it's not like respect for my teammates, like I I like to make softball like a very animate object, and I'll tell my dad like I'll be like, "Oh, my boyfriend's being super toxic today," and he's like, "Your boyfriend?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I couldn't field a ground ball today, and then I got hit in the leg with another one," and he's like, "Your boyfriend?" And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, softball is my boyfriend. I'm like, it is the most craziest relationship I've ever been in. I was like, you tell me another relationship that will give you everything you want in the world and take it away in just as fast. And I was like, it's kind of crazy. And I was telling him like my glove, and I was like, that's the only thing I have on the field that protects me from getting hurt. Right.
Right.
And I was like, there's no way I'm going to throw my glove across the field. I'm like, you paid a lot of money for that. I didn't pay for it, but I know you paid for it. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
that was expensive glove. And I was like, I'm going to respect your time and your money, and I'm going to put it down. I'm going to oil it. I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to wrap it up when I have to. Like everything that comes to softball, my cleats are always perfectly done because I know like there's people out there that don't have the cleats,
Right.
right? Like softball is an opportunity that's not always given, right? Like it can be taken away so fast. And I've learned that so many times through crazy coaches, through injury, like stuff like that. Like I've had to do it all, right? So I know how fast a game can be there one day and just gone the next, right? And I always say I only have 3 years left to play, right? So I'm gonna respect the game as much as possible, right? If you respect the game like a boyfriend, it's gonna respect you, right? And you walk on and off the field with like a type of like confidence that like this is where you're meant to be, then that's where you're meant to be, right? I have so many coaches like that I'm talking to right now. They're like, you know what? I just talked to a coach about you. And I'm like, I never talked to that coach before. And they're like, no, but you played against them. And I was like, okay. And I was like, when did they say? And they're like, nothing. They had nothing but great things to say about you. So it's always like little things like when I walk into the field, it's always a blessing, right? Because I know like tomorrow I'm not going to play softball,
Right.
right? So hearing like I was telling my parents, it's so awesome to hear like even coaches realize how much the game means to me, right? Where coaches that I've never had a conversation with can go out and tell another college coach, you want her on your team. Like I've seen her play before. You want her on the field because she's so passionate. The coach said that one of the coaches I played in my JUCO said that he never saw so much passion and love. I never had a conversation with the man. How does he know that I was just really happy that day? Right. So I was telling my parents, like, it's always so amazing to see that, like, I'm getting so many opportunities, like playing for this team, playing collegiate softball, getting my education paid for with the sport. It's awesome. But I'm like, it's something that they never knew when they put me in it that it was going to be so important. And now it's like a form of like everything that they've taught me growing up, everything I've learned in school, everything that like my city has taught me from being from El Paso. It all plays into one little thing. Like when I'm on the field, I don't think I ever like have said something so like where they say it's competitiveness. Like I'm like, nope, there's still a person. Like there's still someone that's struggling just as much as I am, right?
Right.
Or like back at my JUCO, I was at on second base and I was like standing there and one of the girls said something and I was like, "Oh, where are you from?" And she was like, Delicias. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, I know so many people. I played on a team with girls that were all from Delicias. And I was like, we would travel back and forth. And I was like, I love. And I was like, it's a culture. Like you always know someone, right? And it's like, even if they were like, oh, Florida. And I'm like, great. Well, my brother-in-law is from Florida, right? Like you always try to find a connection. So I feel like even just being raised the way I was, like my parents have always encouraged me to try crazy things. And it's always paid off. Like things that I'm like, I don't really want to do, right? And then I end up doing it. And I'm like, oh, fine, I had fun. Like it was actually really fun, Dad, that you took me to the mall with you and sat with me the whole time. Like things like that. But like softball has always been something that like I can bring it in every aspect of my life and it's taught me so much. I mean,
It has. And look, it's
yeah.
paid off.
Oh, for
You said
sure.
you didn't think you were going to get picked in the last four,
I
and there you
didn't.
are. You're
Yep.
representing the United States.
Crazy.
You're going to La Habana, Cuba, which you've
Excited.
never been,
Never been to Havana, Cuba.
and July 31st, right?
July 31st. I'll be leaving August 1st to Havana.
Empowering leadership in
Latina
Latina
athletes.
athletes.
Yes. So the coach that is coaching this team, his daughter plays softball and goes to Cornell University, some Ivy League in New York area. She started this foundation and it has sprouted so much. And when I found out about it, he sent me like a news recording of it and it made me and my mom cry because I was like, that is awesome. Like there's so much like things that we can talk about our culture. Like we had a whole conversation about it,
Yeah.
right? And there's no other person that'll understand more than another Latina athlete, right? So it's not just for softball. They have all sports. They have ambassadors for every sport. And it's just showing, like I mentioned earlier, showing that like, oh, she can do it, I can too. Right. Or like she left her home is 200 and something thousand miles away from home. I can do it too. Right. Like I see myself in that other Latina athlete that's making it somewhere. And that's basically what that foundation is doing. And it's so amazing to hear that like someone like my coach's daughter and his wife, they're the ones that run it, are doing something like that because there's so much advocacy that needs to be done for us and
For sure.
everything for
Yeah.
sure.
And I think for a long time, we've just kind of been left out there,
Oh, for sure.
and not
Figure it
being,
out.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's amazing to have these resources, to have
Oh,
people
for
who get
sure.
out and speak about it. And
Yep.
not only to speak about it, but that also are representing and that are
Yep.
showing, kids who may be struggling right now. Oh, I'm not good enough. Like you said,
Yeah.
that you can make it. You can
Oh,
do
for
it.
sure.
Anyone, you
Or
just,
like I have had friends that are like, oh, my parents would never let me. Like like when I started posting about Cuba, they're like, my parents would never let me go to Cuba alone, like your parents are. And I was like, that's kind of crazy. And I was like, why do you say that? And they're like, because like, who's gonna clean the backyard? Who's gonna help my mom cook? Who's gonna do this? And who's gonna take care of my grandpa? And who's gonna? And
right.
I was like, my grandpa lived with me my whole life growing up. And I was like, my parents still supported me to do everything I can and
And I think that's
more.
what we also should teach, the parents, that yes, that kids can help out around the house, but they're eventually going to have to,
Oh
fly
yeah.
away.
And
And
I'm
let's
so
support them to do the things that they
oh for
love and
sure.
to accomplish things, become successful,
For
and not
sure.
tie them down necessarily to our current necessities where we
Yep.
limit their possibilities of a future.
No, for
I think a
sure.
lot of people, older generations, because of the needs at their home,
Uh-huh.
they stopped their future. They
Yeah.
stopped, seeking a higher education.
Yep.
They didn't, because they had that. They had the responsibility
Yep.
of taking care of their mom, their dad, or their grandmother, or their parents passed away, and they had to take responsibilities
For
at a
sure.
young age. So,
Yeah. And I'm
uh,
so blessed. I always tell my mom, like every time I talk about my parents, I always say like they are angels on earth. Like my parents, I always tell my friends like I don't deserve them. Me and my siblings will never understand how we got so blessed. And I always make a joke. Like I told my mom the other day, like not the other day, when I got hurt, when I got the cut on my eyebrow, she was so mad at me, right? And she came into my room later on. And I was like laying there. I was mad at her and I was like, whatever. And she was like, it hurts me to see you hurt. And she's like, I can't
right.
stand it.
Mm.
Right. And she left and I was telling my friend about it. And then I was telling her, I was like, but I totally get why she's mad. And I was like, my mom made me from scratch. And I always tell everyone that. And people are like, you're crazy. What does that mean? I'm like, they made me from scratch. My parents made me from scratch. Like every like gene in my body, every like little DNA strand, I was like, they made me from scratch. And so they want to see me succeed as much as they know I can, and they know that like sky's the limit with their support. So I know like even like going to Cuba, it's crazy. When I first brought the idea up to my mom, she was like, I don't really want you going alone. And I was like, well, other girls are going alone. And I was like, we can totally do this, whatever. But she never once told me I couldn't do it. Right. It was like we'll figure it out. Right. When the money situation came up with going to Cuba, it was never like, no, we can't do it. It was more of like, we'll figure it out. We'll find a way. We'll find a way. Right. Like you said, like my mom was like, we can totally make like plates of food and like start selling stuff. We can use your dad's company to start selling stuff. And it was never like, you can't do it. But it was
Right.
like,
You got to
we're
figure it
going
out.
to figure it out as a
Right.
family. Right. So I truly believe that everything that I've done, like, yeah, it's amazing opportunities, but it would never have been done without my parents, like, truly.
For sure.
And they're, like I mentioned earlier, like, they're my biggest advocates, right? Like, something happens in my life, they're the first people I run to. And they're always have been there. And I'm so blessed for that. And even like with crazy things, like, I have crazy, crazy ideas. And I'm like, okay, so after all these interviews, and I was like, I have a visit in Connecticut that I really want to go to the school. And I was like, and while we're there, since we're already going to be far east, right? And I was like, why don't we also go to this school? And I'm like, and since we're there in Long Island, why don't we go to Massachusetts, right? And I'm like, and since we're there, it's only like an hour bus drive to New York. And I was like, and I've never seen Times Square. And I'm like, we can totally do that, guys, right? And I told this them, like said this to them on the way in the car, and they were like, no. And I was like, we can totally do it. And I was like, we'll figure it out. Like, and I was like, I really want to go see New York. And they're like, no, Isabella, we're saving money for Cuba, like we're trying to send you out there. And I was like, okay. And I was like, but what if we did it, guys? Right? And it's never like a no, 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 you're crazy. But like as soon as I was like, I got really quiet and I was like, it would be cool. And
Yeah.
then I said that, and then my parents like looked at each other and they were like, we'll figure it out. Right. And it's always that with my parents. And it's so awesome. And I I'm so blessed. And like I said, they are angels on earth. And like my whole family is so supportive. Even my extended family knows that like, oh, like John and Rosa, my parents are like, John and Rosa didn't come to the party. And they're like, his daughter and the son, yeah, they're probably at baseball. And then they're like, where are they? Like Oklahoma or something. I don't know. And then we'll get a text message like, hey, what are y'all doing this weekend? Why aren't you at the carne asada? Why aren't you at the party? Why aren't you like at grandma's house? And I'm like, oh, bro, I just got out of done playing like 15 games today. And they're like, oh, okay. Did you win? I'm like, yeah, we won. So like, it's a huge family support thing, and it's awesome. And it goes back to everything we've been talking about, right? And I feel like it's something that's so important to mention because I wouldn't be here without them. Like they said, they made me from scratch. So hearing like with the foundation and how it got started, and hearing like the athletes or my coach's daughter talk about why she started it. It's so true because most parents like to keep us home
Oh
and
yeah.
they keep us close. But the kids that do get out, they make so much of a difference, so much of an impact. And that foundation purely does that. It encourages, it gives scholarships to girls, and it's all this amazing things. And I even all throughout high school I worked with another foundation kind of like this, with my high school called Mija Yes You Can, and it started in El Paso. And the Iris Lopez has done an amazing job finding like scholarships and donations and doing like charity work. And it's an amazing foundation, all just to support the idea that like you can do it, right? Every girl, every Latina has heard her mom say, Mija, yes, you can. Right. And it's that same idea. And it's awesome to know that there's people advocating and starting up, bringing more awareness to this. And that's what that foundation does for sure.
Perfect. Hey,
Mhm.
we're proud of you. We are
Thank
proud
you.
to get to know you
Thank
now.
you.
You do have some roots in East Texas.
Yes, I
That's why she's
do.
here.
I do.
So you got some family down
For
here.
sure. Even
Uh,
in Dallas and San Antonio, I think my parents, they said they wanted to come out and retire out here, and I told them they had to stay in El Paso, but they don't agree. They said
yeah,
they like green, so I don't know.
they like some green grass
They
and
like
some trees,
water.
pine
Apparently,
trees.
you need water to
Yeah.
survive. I don't know.
So we're proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for representing again the first Texan to join and travel
Thank
and represent the United States. For all those listening and watching us, we're gonna put all the links so they can support you.
yes,
That's the big thing,
for
and
sure.
I really am proud of the way you think
Thank
and your
you.
future. And hey, just
It's exciting.
yeah,
Hmm.
keep
I
going.
agree. Thank
And
you.
don't change. There's a lot of people that will probably benefit from you once you're done with your
That's the
social
goal.
work, and
Yeah,
there's definitely people out there that
I
need the help.
agree. I
So
agree.
Isabella, I wish you the best,
Thank you so
um,
much.
and have fun.
Thank
Enjoy this
you.
part of your career, your softball, your life. It's a once in a lifetime chance, really.
Definitely is.
Uh, you really stood out from the rest of the people,
Thank
and it
you.
shows.
Yes,
So.
I
Anything
appreciate
else
it.
you want to say? If you had to send one message to all these young Latina and Latino athletes, what would you tell them?
Oh, that's a lot of pressure. I'm like, oh, I don't know what to say anymore. Um, you are enough. Just as simple as that. I feel like that's, and we've talked about it so much throughout this whole conversation. Just you're enough in everything that you do, even if you feel like you aren't succeeding in nothing and you are the last person in everything. You are still enough, and your place in everything has made an impact in so many people's lives. And there's not one person that cannot live their life without you. And I feel like that's very, very important to be said. Yes.
All right, Sabella. Well, thank you much. Again,
Thank
congratulations
you.
and good luck. We wish you the best in all.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
All right, guys. Well, join us again. We're doing this. We turned into a completely
There
English
was my
podcast
Spanish. I
today.
said
Hey, When you come back from Cuba, we'll see how many more words you pick up. And it's obviously different because, we speak Spanish, but not everybody speaks the same Spanish. So,
yes,
that gets into a whole different ballpark.
I'll be speaking good Spanish then.
All right. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank